All right then. Thank you, Maria. Good. Okay, I'm calling to order the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, April 2nd. It's remote participation by Zoom. Of course, there's rules about this, so I'm going to quickly go through those. This is the chair of the Finance Committee. I'm going to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. I'll start with members. Peter Schaefer.
Here.
I was about to say Joe Grouse. Jill Feed.
Here.
Jeremy Blumer.
Here.
Rob Giacchetti. Okay, Rob, I know you're there. So staff, when I call your name, Maria went dark. I think Maria.
Here.
Thank you, Brian. Turbot. Okay, we're out of practice on Zoom, folks. Okay, the anticipated speakers on the agenda. Joe, that would be you. Joe Grouse.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such public participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Finance Committee is convening by video conference. Please make sure that you do not screen share anything on your computer. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda, and then I will ask the committee members if they have any questions or comments. And may I have an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Peter.
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. You're muted, but that's okay. I'm going to open up for public comment to see if there's any public comment about anything that is not on our agenda. Seeing no physical hands nor electronic, I will close the public comment. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Jill and Joe. It's a discussion of the Town Council Study Work Group, and as a reminder for the members, this is to give Jill your thoughts about a town council form of government so she can bring it back to the work group. Joe is also here to be obviously the expert on all things town council study work group, so you can make comments, Joe, and or answer questions as you like. And at this point, I'm turning the chair over to Jill. There you go, Jill.
Thank you, Denise. Hi, everyone. I think, I just wanted to have some sort of, well, I thought it'd be good for you to get an update as our committee, to have an update on where we are with the Town Council Study Committee. It's still very early stages and days, but it already created a little discussion at the select board level last week, I believe it was. And Joe went down to present to them too. So we really just want to update you. I think keeping the Finance Committee in the loop on this just regularly, routinely is important. Our deliberations, I'm sure, are on the committee are probably going to evolve and change. And it's a really big topic. And I believe, supported Curtis's article last year. And so I wanted to make sure that you all kind of knew where we were in our discussion. And also, if you all have any feedback or questions, good idea to answer some of those as we go, rather than feeling like you get this big document at the end and you're like, where did this come from? So just, I'd rather over communicate than under communicate. So with that, I'm going to let Joe talk to you about kind of where he talked to the select board last week and where we are with the contract for a consultant and all those details. Joe?
Thank you, Jill. Nice to see everybody. As I said to Peter, it's a little bit like old home week, being back with all these familiar faces. I should note that I have who am I missing here? I guess three of our regular committee members from the Town Council Study Committee, Curtis Barnes, Jill is the FinCom representative, and then Carol Ann Baltzer, also on the screen, is one of our committee members. Jeremy Blumer. Jeremy is also associated with our committee, but fortunately, Jeremy, you're an alternate. Hang on a second, I'm getting. So I think as an alternate with Jill on the call, we don't run afoul of any quorum issues. Let me just kind of give you a 3 to 5 minute review of kind of where the committee is. This is basically the presentation I gave to the select board last Wednesday, and as it happens, we also, a couple of us, talked to the Nantucket Civic League last night and talked to those folks from the same set of information. The committee was formed, as I think this group probably knows better than many, was formed in response to Article 81 from last year's town meeting, which was a citizens article authored by Curtis to create a committee that would study the establishment of a town council form of government, and if passed, and then place before the a future town meeting, either 2025 or beyond, an article that would enable the town to vote on whether or not they would like to convert to town council. The select board appointed 9 individuals onto our committee. There are 7 sort of, I guess, at-large members, and then added to that would be Jill as the FinCom representative and Tom Dixon as the select board representative. We've been meeting since November, and I think we've had 7 or 8 meetings so far. The sort of the working focus of the groups since we've been getting together has been mainly education. So we've been talking to people from Nantucket town government. We've talked to folks from other towns, town government. We have, as Jill sort of led in, we have met with some folks from the Michael Collins Center, which is part of UMass Amherst, that does public policy work. And we've had them talk to us about kind of all the different forms of town governments available to towns in Massachusetts, but also talk to us about their kind of capabilities as a facilitator, consultant to help the folks on the committee get their work done and stay focused on things. Our thinking kind of up to the select board meeting last week was that we would spend some time educating ourselves and then sort of shift focus to composing a town charter that would, I guess, enable the conversion to a town council form of government, and then as well as work on public outreach activities so that we could sell this idea, communicate this idea to the voters on Nantucket. I think one of the things we all agree on the committee is if we don't communicate this well to the voters, we're not going to be able to get win the vote at town meeting. Clearly, I've said many times the 400 or 500 people that really enjoy going to town open town meeting here on Nantucket are not going to vote themselves out of a job. Denise, what's your thing? But the turkeys aren't going to. No, it's the other way around.
Turkeys aren't going to vote for Thanksgiving. Yes.
They're not going to vote for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So we felt as a group, that coming up with a plan to communicate this to various groups across the island, really is very, very important. Because otherwise we have to attract people that would that don't normally come to town meeting and hopefully gather new additional voters who would be for this particular article. I think really, at that, we've had a number of meetings that have been pretty interesting in terms of the folks that have come to talk to us. I wasn't actually at the meeting, the last regular meeting, which was about 2 weeks ago, where we had John Brescher, who was the chair of the previous government study committee. Brian Turbot was there, and Sarah Alger, our town meeting moderator, all spoke to the group in terms of their views of the pros and cons. And I think there were people who were clearly very pro town meeting among those speakers, as well as people that were, admitted that a town council form of government might have some benefits. Tomorrow's meeting, Denise is one of the headliners, as well as Nancy Holmes and Leslie Snell. So we'll get some different perspectives from that. And I think, really what we're going to be focusing on in the immediate short term is the 9 folks on the committee, we really have to sort of come together in terms of what direction we want to take going forward. I actually, that reminds me, I didn't mention kind of what came out of the select board meeting last week was, in addition to approving the consulting contract with the Collins Center, the select board kind of gave our committee the instruction that they really would like us to focus on all the pros and cons of all forms of government, as opposed to simply looking at town council, which is kind of the simple reading of the way the article was composed, and that we shouldn't feel so firmly committed to creating an article that would convert to town council. So I think the select board feels that our group should be sort of more of a general study effort and not so focused on town council. I have to say, and my colleagues from the committee who are on the call here probably have their own opinion. I don't think our group is kind of come to a conclusion as to which way to play that, and that's probably something we'll be talking about tomorrow night. I think that's about it. Why don't I stop chatting and see if anybody has any questions or would like to talk about anything to do with the Town Council Study Committee.
Peter?
Joe, when you say Town Council Study Committee, does that include like a council manager, a council mayor, or is it just strictly a town council, in your opinion?
Well, okay.
Or maybe Curtis.
Yeah, well, and Curtis can join in, but there are 4 forms of government that exist in Massachusetts, and for that matter, mostly around the country: open town meeting, representative town meeting, town council, strong manager or town council form, and then mayor, city council. We have really not focused at all on mayor, city council. That really, I think, is maybe we should do some more work on that, but that really, the only municipalities that are mayor, city council are really the largest cities in the state: Boston, Worcester, and so on. I think the most common, and then I don't know what the numbers are, but I think open town meeting still has the most number of communities that use it as a form of government. And then representative town meeting, I don't know the numbers, but I know that it actually, not too many communities have actually converted to representative town meeting in the last 30 or 40 years. So I don't know if I've answered the question, Peter. I did kind of go on.
That's good.
Oh, well, no, I'm sorry. I should ask, and Curtis, you may want to, Curtis's article, as I said, if you just read it, and part of the reason that several of us joined this committee was to focus on town council as the best next step for Nantucket, and to really focus on trying to get that approved at a town meeting and by the electorate. Curtis, you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. My article assumes a strong town manager, just like Barnstable, where you have a town council, but you have a town manager. And that is implicit in the direction what I had proposed. I would also remind you all that all of your functions that currently exist, the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, all of the things in our organizational chart, which you can look at in the annual town report, are still in place. And there is plenty of opportunity to discuss issues of concern with the community. Again, my objective was to make this a process that would make running the town a little bit more efficient, not taking 35 zoning articles at one meeting and last year 107 articles, of which we actually discussed 30 or so. But going back to your question, it definitely, the model I am looking at is a strong town manager with a council, but all of the supporting boards that currently exist or may need to exist.
Yeah, but I want to add as the chair here that in that, all that is still, and this is what the Finance Committee, I really want you to understand. All that is up to the town council. We could maybe make a recommendation as a committee to say we want to keep the finance committee in the charter. I guess we could do that, but I don't think that's what would be recommended. So while Curtis likes the organization chart to stay the same, I think that's the way I understand this, it's really up to the town council to decide how they do that. So do they want to keep the tree advisory committee? How they going to do the licensing board? You know, when you change, it's really up to them to decide that. I don't think it's going to be up to our committee to decide that, although I guess we can make recommendations for that.
Thank you, Jill. I just want to make sure we get to Jeremy, and then Joe, I'll come back to you. And I just want to remind the town council study group, please don't debate with each other.
Yeah.
Okay. So Curtis, please don't answer Jill is what I was looking for there. So.
No,
I just thought I'd head you off at the pass, Curtis. Jeremy?
Oh, thank you, Denise. Jill and Joe, as the alternate, I can't speak up unless at the committee, unless Jill is not there. But one of the early meetings when she wasn't there and I was allowed to speak, what I observed, and I still observe it, is we can study all these different forms of government, and we can communicate and we can over communicate and have a great strategy. But until we can define what the problem is that we're seeking to solve, you're not, in my opinion, you're not going to be in a position to sell this at the end of the day. And so I would encourage you guys to constantly think about it. And there was the last meeting where you invited Brian Turbot and some others to come, and I was not able to see that, to discuss issues of government and how things might be done differently. But I still believe, from what I have seen, that if you guys, you're all doing a great job and there's lots of good people on it and you're asking great questions. But if you could reserve a little more time to define what it is you're seeking to solve and how the new form of government, whichever it will be, are going to accomplish that, I still think that is absolutely critical to ultimately selling this.
Thank you, Jeremy. I know I've handed the chair baton to Jill and I keep taking it back from her. I think
That's fine. Go for it. I'm fine. I'm good with that.
I think what she also needs from us is, you know, as people, what do you see are the pros of this, of a town council form of government, and what do you see are the cons? To be able to bring back to the study committee, so Jill has the information, and then also too, I get to make notes and then just repeat it tomorrow, so it also makes my life easier. That's where I was going with that. So you know, so I don't know who would like to go first on the finance committee. Peter?
Well, I think the current system is kind of absurd, that we can only make decisions once a year. And I think, you know, financial decisions especially. And I believe that a council system would allow us to make decisions weekly, which to me is a much more efficient way to run a business. And as much as we like it or not, $200 million budget is a business.
Thank you, Peter. Jeremy, your hand's still up, so I'm gonna let you go next, whether you were intending to or not.
Sorry, I didn't remove it. Obviously, efficiency is very important. The size of our government has gotten to be much, much larger than many years ago, and I think this worked. There are issues of we only have maybe a 15% voter participation, and this could increase it in numerous fashions. There were discussions at one point a while ago that maybe we were not getting grants, especially at the airport. Apparently, I'm told that is not the case. But as far as getting federal money or state money, being responsive is a major issue.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anything against town council? And then I'm going to go to Joe. His hand was up quickly, Stephen, and then come to you. Anything against a town council from your perspective?
Are you talking to me?
I was talking to Jeremy to see if he had any cons. He had pros.
No.
And I was wondering.
Oh, you said Joe. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to go Joe next. Yeah, we are out of practice for fully remote. I can tell you that.
I think the negatives are that there is a large body that enjoys this form of government and is adverse to change of any nature. And so one needs to be compelling in your argument in order to overcome that burden.
Thank you.
But-
Okay,
But my sense is, Denise, my ultimate sense is that a more efficient form of government that this represents would be a good thing.
thank you, Jeremy. Joe, and then I'll go to Stephen.
I'm with Peter. This is a hugely complicated subject, and not having been a member of a committee that's listened to the pros and cons of different kinds of systems, I'm somewhat handicapped, but I agree. I mean, we have an organization that is way too big to make decisions, important decisions, once or twice a year. And my name is one of the names on the warrant. I signed the application for this warrant.
Thank you, Joe. Do you see any cons to this other than?
I'm
what's
not smart
stated
enough
already?
to see. I'm not smart enough to know the ins and outs. No form of government is perfect, but I think something that gives us the flexibility, gives the town the flexibility to make a decision more than once or twice a year is a huge improvement.
Thank you. Stephen?
So a question for anybody who has the information. Is there anything limiting the number of town meetings that we can hold in a year?
The
Libby, I
attention
think
span of our citizens.
that might be a Libby question.
No,
Or if
no.
Jill knows the answer.
I don't think there is. I think we just have to have one. And then, I mean, citizens can put together a special town meeting just with a number of signatures. But that is one thing that's come up before, I think, for the government study committee. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've looked at like, should they recommend having more than one meeting a year? So that is a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know that you know whether or not an open town meeting or representative town meeting form could have multiple town meeting. I mean, clearly you can have an annual town meeting and specials. I just don't know if there's a limit. Certainly the amount of work that goes into creating a warrant and dealing with, you know, financial, zoning and other issues, even if you had 3 or 4 or 5, I mean, it's just a lot of work, as opposed to having a more continuous, you know, process that the town councils seem to operate under.
So that I think raises an important issue. If it's a lot of work because statutorily we need to have finance and planning board and others weigh in on warrant articles before they go to town meeting, wouldn't we want that same level of rigor applied to those same decisions that now are made more frequently?
Well, I think you would, but don't you think it would be sort of spread out through 52 weeks? I don't, you know, I think, and Curtis probably knows this better than I do, but the town council examples we looked at all seem to operate on a bi-weekly basis. You know, a lot of this sort of mountain building that happens every time you have town meeting would be spread out over the year, but you're still going to need finance committees and planning boards and you know, other sort of expert bodies to review and prepare material for you know, a vote at the town council.
So I mean, as somebody who occasionally feels the need for self-punishment, I watch select board meetings. You all do on occasion. They're not short. They don't deal with any of the articles. Well, they talk about some of the issues that come to town meeting, but not all of them. And they have full warrants, and they don't meet in the summer. And you know, you're talking about taking essentially the same body. Maybe you're going to double it in size or something, but you're going to give them an immense workload. And you say you're going to spread it out over the course of the year. It's not as if they don't already work throughout the year. You know, efficiency is a nice buzzword, but what exactly are we solving for? You know, to Jeremy's point, what is the new feature that we're going to bring about.
And Stephen, on top of that, given that the select board does meet, once a week or often throughout the year, how would something new be different than what we presently have? So again, I think we have to put together a recommendation with good proof as to how it's differentiated from what's done today, what problem it solves, and why the new thing is going to be better.
Jill?
Yeah, I personally, Stephen, don't think recommending the town council is for efficiency. Government by nature is not efficient, so that's never gonna happen. I think the town council probably gets paid, and so, we can maybe attract more people to run for the job. One of the big detractors for me is I think well, public input would I think be pretty similar weekly. Like if you went to the meeting, you followed the meetings, you could go do public comment, all that kind of. I think that a lot of things would be made, more decision would be made, maybe in executive session. There would probably be more of those because they would just have more decisions to make. But do I think it's more efficient? I don't. But again, the detraction for me is, well, let's say you have something that you really want to happen in the town. You only have to appeal to 9 people. You don't have to appeal to 700 and then another 2,200 at the ballot, let's say. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. But efficiency, no.
Those sound more like bugs than features to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Curtis, did you want to say something to Stephen's question?
I just want to point out that a town council or an annual town meeting, the summer residents and non-resident people, the many people here who live here but are not enrolled as voters, they can't even go in the door at town meeting. They can go to the selectmen and speak. But in a town council, anyone can walk into that meeting, make a statement, and speak directly to the legislative body. That is not possible for that underserved part of our Nantucket community at the present time. And that's another reason why the town council gives more people more access with a better voice.
Okay, Rob, Joe, I'll come to you after Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
I'm not sure whether the last comment is a feature or a bug either, but in general, my reaction to this, if I was I'm someone listening to it for the first time, and I'm hearing a lot of talk about how we sell it and get people on board, and I haven't heard that it's been studied yet, so that's concerning, right? I agree. The problem statement should be defined, and all of these things that Stephen brought up need to be assessed. What does this look like currently? What does it look like in this proposed future state? And I think if you're going to get people on board for a change of this magnitude, there has to be a good reason for doing it and a clearly articulated explanation of how the new form of government solves the problem that was stated.
Thank you. Okay, Joe, you had something else?
Yes, to me, our current form of government is designed and appreciated by people who don't want to see anything change. That is its principal achievement, no change. Because change is so hard. And to me, in today's world, that's not a good place to be.
Okay.
And to me, that's the reason why it makes sense to empower some number of people with the decision-making authority that exists at town meeting. And I think that's, Curtis, in simple terms, that's what what this town council does, correct? Am I wrong?
He's not.
So if you're part of the group that doesn't want to see anything change and really doesn't trust a small group of people to do what's right, then this is a no-go. If you're part of a group that thinks that some ability to make decisions in a efficient and timely manner is important in today's world, which I can't believe anybody doesn't think unless they don't want any change. I think this idea has merit.
Thank you, Joe. Stephen had his hand up first, Jill. He raised his physical hand, and then I'll come back to you. Stephen?
Thank you. I just want to ask some follow-up questions to Joe. You say if you're not part of the small group that makes decisions today, then you don't trust another small group, or you must not want change. What change does town meeting not allow that you think town council would foster?
We have a number of issues. Who's going to pay for a Baxter Street move? Who's going to build the bulwarks to protect the downtown part of Nantucket if that's necessary? How are we going to rejiggle our waste management system? We have too many big decisions that can't be made, that are not going to be easy or smart to make, meeting once or twice or even 3 times a year. We need somebody to run the joint and to have some authority. And to have a group of,
Those are executive branch functions. I don't think what you're talking about, deciding whether Baxter Road improvements are going to be a betterment or spread out on the tax base, that's not a function of town meeting in the first place. So it wouldn't go to town council. So with respect,
who's going to
these are
make
not
that
problems.
who's going to
The
make
select
that
board.
who's going to make that decision?
The select board would today, and I guess the town manager and its staff would in the future. That's not a legislative function.
Libby, am I wrong? Wouldn't be the first time.
I believe the select board would make those decisions, and there may be some town meeting approval at some point on specifically on that betterment
I
idea.
think you're going to have some sort of a thing go to town meeting to decide how the costs are split.
Well, what would go to town meeting is the appropriation for something like that, and then the select board would determine the split, as happens now.
And just one more thing, Denise. The issue over very localized issues like a betterment in Sconset are best, I think, discussed amongst the whole voter base, the whole tax base, and not a very small group of people, where a moneyed outside group or special interest group might have better access and, as Curtis put it, a better voice to lobby
That's the American
small
way.
number of 7 or 9 people. Yeah, it is the American way, Joe, and not in a good way. I don't think that means what you think it means. So yes, you can lobby 9 people faster and more effectively and more efficiently and in a more timely manner, as you describe it, than you can at town meeting. But that's why a town meeting is good. If you want things to change more quickly, I suggest you go elsewhere.
Jill is next. Jill had raised her hand yonks ago. So Jill, and then I go to Joe Grouse, and then I go to Jeremy. So that's the order. Jill?
Yeah, a lot of those things too, Stephen, really haven't been debated yet, right? It's very early for what we're looking at. So you're raising some really good points, and I appreciate that. The other issue I want to bring up tonight, though, especially, to get everybody's view, is that it's the zoning piece that I think would be the least palatable to changing that would be the biggest change for people here. And that's something that I feel like we keep talking about, like, oh, it's the budget and getting the budget through. But for people here, the properties they own or their families owned, or the zoning is huge. And that's something that I think is a bigger I don't want to say it's a hurdle. It's just, to me, that's probably what's got to be debated more than even some of the other aspects to this. Because that is a huge change.
Thank you, Jill. Joe, and then Jeremy, and then Peter.
If I could just throw in there, it was one of the things that occurred to me when Stephen was chatting. I think we have to remember that open town meeting here on Nantucket actually attracts, compared to the rest of the state, a fairly high participation rate. We've probably had average 7 or 8% of the voting public attend town meeting over the last 10 years or say, with maybe a high of 10 or 11% and a low of 5 or 6%. But that's but that's actually still not a great thing, because 90% of the voters of this island don't have the time, interest, have too much work, have to take care of their kids or whatever. They don't attend town meeting, and so the attendees at town meeting, call it the 500 to 800 people, are a self-selected group. And Stephen commented that, gee, if you had 9 town councilors, that it'd be easier to lobby. Well, I believe, and maybe people might not agree with me, but I believe that the self-selected group of people who like town meeting are already pretty easy to lobby, because they kind of put themselves into that group and go to town meeting. The other thing I wanted to comment on is sort of expertise. I think we've seen with a short-term rental process, if you will, that really complicated issues are really hard to manage and really hard to debate when you've got 1,000 people in the room, and some of them feel very strongly about different aspects or different ways of dealing with an issue or a problem. I personally think having a representative town council with 9 or 10 or 11 town councilors who, yes, will be lobbied, but who are also going to be beholden and responsible to all of the electorate, not just the 800 or 900 people who'd like to show up, will give you more effective and more efficient operation. So anyway,
Joe,
one man's thought.
Thank you, Joe. Jeremy's next, Curtis after, or no, it's Jeremy, Peter, Curtis. I'm having trouble keeping track here today.
Thank you, Denise. I think Joe and Jill, just today's conversation shows you, I think, the difficulty of putting these issues in front of people, in part because so many people are going to conflate this into different things. And so as you guys hopefully come up with defining what the problem is and how different forms of government may address that, you will create a scaffold that should close down arguments so things are not conflated, and that the real issues can then be presented with clarity. And so I encourage you to do that.
Jeremy, have you ever been to a town meeting?
I've been to quite a few of them, yes.
Okay. Peter and then Curtis.
A couple of questions. Number one, and you guys, whoever can answer it. What percent of the vote do you need to get this passed? Number one. And number two is, outside of New England, are there any other states in this country that have town meeting? That's my questions.
Well, I know the answer to the first one, so it has to be 50.1%, right? So it has to be greater than 50%.
Yeah, well, at town meeting, we would need a
Right.
majority. I don't think it's a
Right.
2/3 vote.
No.
Simple majority, okay.
Yeah, I think it's simple majority, and then it would also have to be passed at the ballot box too. So, and the other, on the question of how, what was it, Peter? How many?
Outside of New England, I think it might pay for you guys to research what other states have town meeting.
It's a New England phenomena. I don't know the answer to how many municipalities have town meeting. I do happen to know at least from an anecdotal basis, that town councils are the most frequent form of government, I think, across the country. But
I guess that's my point. If 80% of the governing in this country in towns and municipalities is being done by a council, why do we think that our town meeting is a better idea?
What a thing.
I don't have the answer.
Part of a meeting where people are arguing that Nantucket should be the same as the rest of the country. What a shame. with no clarity about what the problem is. Nobody's been able to articulate that here in 40 minutes.
I think I have articulated the problem. And that is that
It wasn't efficient.
current
We got
system
that.
keeps things from happening.
Right. And then I asked you what things, and you named things that wouldn't be changed with this town council form of government.
Okay, so everybody needs to remember, it has to go through me before you talk. Please. And so there's no back and forth with each other. And then I'm happy for you to go back and forth with each other, but let's make sure we stick to the process of the meeting. Curtis, it is your turn, and then Jeremy, you'll be after Curtis.
Thank
I
you.
thought-
Libby mentioned, or someone asked about Baxter Road. And Libby said the select board would decide. The select board will authorize money that was approved at town meeting, only approved at town meeting. The select board is not a legislative body, and it does not allocate money. It allocates money that's been approved at town meeting. To answer another question, through our research, 65% of local government in the United States is a council form of government. Now, let me give you a couple other examples. As a water commissioner, we had the people at Tom's Way come to us with high levels of PFAS. In order for the water commission to address that question, we would have to wait till town meeting to get the money released to fix Tom's Way. The commissioners and the management decided to go forward and go in essence into a deficit. We have reserved retained earnings. We had plenty of money to do it. And we went ahead and took care of Tom's Way immediately. They now have a water line down there serving 18 houses that were having PFAS up to 8,000. And 2 weeks ago at the select board, the people from Arkansas Avenue came in and said that's in Mattakit, said they had discovered high PFAS and wanted to know what to do. Well, the Water Commission meets next week, and I am sure that we will immediately proceed to take care of the problem, even though those funds have not been released because we have to wait a year to get them. And the town council is a legislative body that can release funds quickly to go over, in our case, those two problems. And Brian's going to tell me I'm wrong.
Brian,
Madam Chair, so I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, Curtis, but I'm going to probably just make a couple adjustments. The Tom's Way extensions are being paid from the $9 million authorization that was approved at a prior town meeting. So they're outside of the SRF portion of that funding, but there was a $9 million bond authorization that was approved. So Tom's Way is not actually putting the water company in a deficit, and you would have had no ability to go into deficit lawfully without a declaration of an emergency, which we would have had to help facilitate. So that is not completely the way that Tom's Way was connected. Secondly, if the water company is going to make additional extensions such as Arkansas Way, they have more than one previously approved borrowing authorization that they could use for water main extensions. So there would be no deficit that they would just be going and waiting to be able to use retained earnings or something of that nature. They already have previously approved borrowing authorizations from prior town meeting for water main extensions projects. So they would not be in a deficit, nor would my office ever let a department go into a deficit. The water company is separately enabled under special legislation. So I'm not sure that a town council would actually be able to help them spend money. I don't know if that would actually work. I guess it would be on how it's written, but I'm not sure that a town council would be able to authorize the water company to expend retained earnings or something outside of their, I don't know how this all works, actually.
thank you, Brian. Curtis, I really don't want to get into a debate about this with Brian. at this point. I think that's something that's more of a detail to be worked out at the town council study committee. And Joe?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think Jeremy's point is a very good one. I haven't heard a crisp, clear reason for change yet. And to me, Curtis and company, that's something that has to be agreed, because without that, we don't have a chance.
Thank you, Joe. Rob?
Yeah, just further to that, I think all of these things that have been brought up and are not relevant. You need to come up with some use cases that are, to be able to show this situation currently, this situation under the new form of government, right? So that would be my recommendation, that you consider looking at it that way. And because again, if I understand it correctly, the task of the committee is to study this and determine if it makes sense or not. And I'm hearing a lot of, we already know that it makes sense and we have to figure out how to prove it. And I don't know that that's where you want to be coming from.
Thank you, Rob. Jill?
Let me just clarify for you, Rob and Joe, that's not where I am at all. To me, we're looking at all the forms of government, and we may make a recommendation and we may not get to an agreement where we do. So I think that's where I am, and I want to make sure I reflect the committee on that as well, because I'm representing all of you. And I want to go into the process open-minded and listen to all the arguments and get into the weeds on all of that. But I don't think of the 9 people, I don't think we have 5 that are like, hey, we want to do it this way or not. I don't think we're there yet.
Thank you, Jill. Couple things from my side. So I look at this, it's very clear, as with any change, it has to be, Rob gave the best example of, this is how it happens today. And if we were in a town council or some other form of government, this is how it would happen tomorrow. Do we like it better that way or not? Right? So I think that's very clear that as this process goes on. My questions are probably simpler, which is, you got authorization for $20,000 of consultancy to actually, the original scope of the consultancy was to help flesh out the path to town council and write a potential article. Now you're studying all 4 forms of government and doing comparison charts. Is $20,000 enough money? Joe?
You know, I'm not sure, but I can tell you, we've spent a fair amount of time on the 4, well, certainly the 3 of the 4 forms of town government, and I think creating the, whether it's a strengths and weaknesses comparison or a pros and cons comparison, I think that can be done fairly quickly. I don't, I just don't see it as, needing another 4-month study. Hopefully we can kind of bring that to a close. And then I think we have to decide as a committee, do we have enough evidence, and is it strong enough that we feel that we can continue to go forward with the town council, which was sort of the initial charter of the committee, or not, and then try to make our decisions from there. I think the 20 grand and the amount of time that the Collins Center has proposed to give us for that amount of money, should be good enough. And if we start to run short, we can, I'll have a conversation with Libby about whether we need to find another little piggy bank.
Thank you. And secondly, one of the things that until I can see it more visually how it will work and see the specific examples and get my head around that, it's just, we're all just using our own experience and trying to ascertain whether this is a good idea or not. My only ask would be at least 11 people, for the simple reason that we're today governing with 700-800 people. And if it's 5 or 7 or even 9, I'm worried that because we only get 2,200 voters out at elections, and 22, you could end up on the town council with only getting 200 votes. And So I would just be concerned that we would end up with, I just would want to make sure we get enough different voices on the committee that we don't end up with, say, 7 of the 9 exactly the same way of thinking. And, you know, that's kind of the beauty of the select board now, is it's clear that all 5 don't think the same way. So, but when they're the only governing function in the town, that would be concerning, that you could end up with 3 of the 5 running the whole place, right? So if we go into a town council, and then what Brian won't like is, I'd love to see a town council that gets paid a living wage, so that way you'd get lots of people able to do it, not just the people who have free time, right? And can afford not to work during the day. So, yeah, so Brian, I'm gonna put in an article that gets them all real salaries. So there you go. So any other comments or questions from the group?
I think you're spot on. I think they should be paid properly.
Thank you, Jeremy. Look at that. I love this one. We all agree. Joe?
I would just like to thank everybody on the FinCom for their candid comments. You know, Rob and Stephen, I think you're absolutely right that we need to come up with a crisper, more focused rationale for whatever change we propose. And I appreciate everybody's thoughts, and I think it's all been helpful from our perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. And just, I mean, I know you all can't read this, but I wrote down what you all said. So I'm just going to repeat it tomorrow at the Town Council Study Committee. So all of your comments are right here on my little piece of paper. And thank you for this. And come back, Jill, because it's kind of your meeting. So
Sorry, I'm crisis.
that's okay. Anything else before I ask for a motion? And thank you, everybody, for your candid comments. I think it's really helpful, because if it's confusing to us, it will definitely be confusing to voters. So, and the general community. Jill, anything else you want to add before I ask for an adjournment?
Nope, just I encourage people to watch some of these recent meetings. Have been really interesting. Tomorrow's will be as well. So I encourage you guys to go back and watch some of them.
And I have a starring role tomorrow, so everybody's going to want to watch just
True, we know we're gonna watch that.
3:50 I'm on, by the way, in case anybody needs to know what time. Our next meeting is April 25th. It's the information session for the voters. We'll see how that goes. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Here we go. Roll call, Jill.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Jeremy.
aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Lisa, aye. Thank you, everyone.
Good to
Thanks.
see you, Joe.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks,
Good to see
Joe.
everybody.